Was driving through my neighborhood the other night, admiring the glow of the many homemade holiday light displays, when I passed one that really stood out for me. I'm sure I'd driven past this house several times this December and hadn't yet noticed the owner's particular display, but on this dark Iowa night, its simple presentation called out to me to be thoughtful and to remember. In between houses with the typical strands of light circling windows and lining rooftops, draping over bushes or illuminating seasonal characters strategically placed on the front lawn, the display that spoke to me was striking in its simplicity. In the picture window facing the street, the owners had positioned large white figurines of Joseph and Mary looking down at a manger where Jesus lay. No animals, shepherds, or wise men were present. No kitschy intermingling of other seasonal figures like snowmen or Santa. Other than a lighted star above their heads, there were no additional lights at all. Just the three iconic figures in their familiar family poses, offering a soothing white glow from head to toe, taking up most of the window. This display might not seem that memorable. Many are the homes that have a miniature creche on a table or a countertop, typically a creche that has been in the family for years, designed with the artistic signatures and cultural preferences of the period when it was created. I can easily recall the creche figurines from my own childhood. Every December, my mom would remove them from their tissue paper blankets and cardboard houses and position them in their rightful places on our living room coffee table. Sometimes over the years, the scene would be disturbed by eager children who naturally believed the nativity scene was a play set. Other times, it would be scrambled by family wise guys who might swap baby Jesus with a sheep or reposition two of the magi to be the proud parents of the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes. Sometimes the figurines would have competition, like during the years when one of my siblings or I would bring home a Sunday school class-produced makeshift manger that would need to find a display table, or the December my 10-year-old brother constructed his own nativity scene out of fallen branches and those little wooden Fisher-Price people. It was pretty cool. But even with these occasional additions to the family holiday decorations, our traditional nativity figurines would still be standing guard over the scene of a holy ceramic birth, and in turn, the life going on inside our home, too. Along with their appointed duty to represent the religious symbols of a Christian December, their yearly presence also afforded them a front row seat to our family interactions. The give and take of joy and pain that was our family life each December during what could be and often was an emotionally heightened time of year, a season filled with expectations for family interactions, both met and unmet. If those figurines could speak, what stories they could tell. Every year different in its stresses and joys, every year different in the ways these circumstances were navigated by the imperfect people who shared the house. I guess that's why the sight of that window display nativity scene the other night captured my imagination. The symbolic Holy Family was not relegated to a coffee table inside, and it was not just tending to its own business, standing guard over its family or even the family that offered it shelter for its watchful vigil. These lighted figures were looking out at me and everyone else who happened to drive along Cottage Grove this season. They were bearing witness to our lives and this life itself. No matter what any of us may feel about this holiday, no matter what we believe to be the real reason for the season, no matter where we fall on the holiday spirit continuum, whether we are on the end with Ebenezer Scrooge pre-Ghosts, or on the other end with George Bailey post-Clarence, or somewhere in between. The world is going on out there, and this season, with its stories and its symbols, it is watching us, whether we will heed its lessons, wondering whether we will embrace the holy night that is waiting for us every blessed night of our lives. It can happen, when the time is right. a sudden grasp of the holiness of our shared life, a sudden understanding that love is all we really need. It can happen, even when it may seem so very unlikely, even when we've messed things up. It can happen. One Christmas Eve when I was around 15, my mom and dad had what I figured must have been a rather stinging argument, even if I hadn't heard its details. As my brother and sister and I readied ourselves for the annual trip to the Christmas Eve church service, I saw that my father had settled himself in his accustomed recliner in our TV room. My dad, not someone who would dally when it came to keeping appointments, clearly was not going to be joining us for the service. Still, by the time we walked out of the house with my mother and my dad remained inside in his stubborn, symbolic sit, I was shocked. I wasn't shocked because he'd chosen to skip church. After all, it had always been clear to me that the only reason my dad ever went to church was to please my mom. No, I was shocked because he was choosing to skip church on Christmas Eve. Knowing it probably wasn't a good time to quiz my mother on my dad's decision, I leaned over to my brother Jeff, home from his first year of college, and I said, "Wow, I can't believe Dad's not coming with us." "Yeah," Jeff said, with some disdain, but not a lot of anger. "What a loser," he said. My brother's assessment of the situation stung at first. I didn't want to hear my dad being called a loser, even if he was acting like one. But before long, my brother's sense of remove and clarity was really helpful to me. My brother had offered me a truly adult summation of the situation, and I was beginning to see its wisdom. Whether or not my dad joined us was, in fact, his decision. And from our perspective, at least, he was missing out. He was a loser, at least to me, at least for the 90 minutes or so the rest of us were together without him. When we returned home after the service, I was the first to enter the house. I found my agnostic dad sitting in our living room with the Advent wreath lit and Christmas music playing on the stereo. The scene was a little too weird for comment. I'm 15, remember? So I offered a brisk, "Hi, Dad," as I made my way toward the bathroom. A minute or two later, my father met me in the hall, and he looked at me. His eyes were red, perhaps from crying. He said, "I'm sorry, Mark," before he gave me a long, lingering hug that to a 15-year-old was a little awkward, but to a 48-year-old thinking back to that night was perhaps the most meaningful and beautiful exchange of emotion that my father and I shared that Christmas or any Christmas since. I didn't know what to say to him, so I chose to say nothing, which was probably for the best. It seemed like he'd already been saying enough to himself anyway. I don't remember much about the Christmas that followed, how long it took for my parents to patch things up, or if there was any noticeable change in any of us as a result of this drama. But I do remember the lesson my dad taught me that night, both in his choice to be stubborn and in his choice to seek forgiveness. No matter how often I or any of us may let our own self-focused expectations, grudges, or games keep us from the love that is waiting for us, the seasons will come and the seasons will go, taking with them more of our always finite time together, precious days and nights that are ripe with possibilities for forgiveness and redemption, if we can find the courage and the resilience to let go, to reach out, and to navigate life not as we think it should be, but as it is, messy, imperfect, and ours to embrace. Each year, whether we welcome them or not, these seasonal celebrations and their attendant symbolic guardians show up anyway, don't they? Reminding us not only of the miracle of one baby's birth, but in our Unitarian Universalist tradition, the miracle of every birth, including our own. Reminding us that this manger scene is not just a story from an ancient text, nor a miniature creche on a table. It can be a metaphor for this surprising life that we share, this messy, unpredictable, miraculous life where even the most humble of births can transform our lives and often do. This story of weary travelers, of unexpected blessings, of surprising grace and transformative love. Birth and rebirth, new life of all sorts can arrive no matter how decrepit or disappointed or disgraced we may be. Birth that graces us whenever we can clearly see for ourselves these cycles of life that comprise our living, leading us to be present in our relationships the best that we can, and in the possibilities for redemption that we often take for granted. Even in the rubble of a night, if not a lifetime gone awry, there lay the building blocks of a family redeemed. Even in the bustle of a culture buried in its busyness and bewilderment, there too are the bonds that can remind us of what is truly important: the love we give, the love we receive, the love we help create. Even in the midst of a world where too few are safe and well-fed, while too many are in danger and in despair, there too are the lessons that all of us intuitively know. The lessons that love and hope are not something to be hoarded, but to be shared. Even in the halls of this church, or in the singular rooms waiting for us across the branching streets this night, far from this gathering of light and warmth during a dark time, we may be surprised to realize that we actually do have all that we need, despite what we don't. As long as we are living, we have all that we need to renew our lives with the love and compassion and forgiveness they deserve. We have all we need. For the miraculous birth of life and love are waiting for us, same as they always have, this Christmas Eve and all the nights to come.